Welcome to the Intentional Encourager podcast, where each episode brings you compelling conversations and stories designed to entertain, enlighten, and encourage. And now here's your host, Brian Sexton.
And welcome into the Intentional Encourager podcast. I'm your host, Brian Sexton. Thank you for joining us again today. And we are reaching across the globe. We are circumnavigating the globe today to find this incredible gentleman. He helps Rachel's. Now, I color me dumbfounded. I have no idea, but we're going to ask him about that. He is a business coach for professional women. He is in Sydney, Australia. I'm in Barbersville, West Virginia. It doesn't matter because right here, right now, we're together. My friend Anthony English is joining me on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Anthony, it's evening here as we record this podcast. It is morning where you are. We have about a 14-hour time gap. How are you today, sir?
Well, I can tell you the future is bright. And now speaking from the future, there's words of encouragement.
Yes.
Last night's winning lotto numbers as well, tonight's winners.
The future is bright. I'm writing that down as we speak. The future is bright. I love it.
And that's a message from the future to you. You know how they say, oh, what would you tell your younger self? Well, I'm just telling your future self, it's here. The future is here. I'm already in it. It's tomorrow.
I would go back to myself at about 18 years old, and I would say it's going to get real interesting for the next 30 years. Hey, Anthony, let's start here. You and your country in Australia.
Yep.
You guys started to see some things around COVID-19 well before we did here in the States. You guys were dealing with a lot of issues and things that we had not yet dealt with here in the United States. And so looking back at the last year, take me through the last year for you personally, professionally. How have you and your family dealt with some of the issues around COVID-19 and this pandemic? I ask people that all the time because I want to get a different perspective than the one that I have. So how has the last year been for you?
Well, to tell you the truth, the impact has been absolutely minimal. I was already working from home, coaching, doing business coaching, and I've also got a YouTube channel that's growing very fast. And so I've been working from home for years. And not only that, we've been homeschooling for years. We've got 7 children, my wife and I. And so it actually, personally, it became a bit easier because there were quite a few children's activities that got canceled.
You are amazing, my friend, because my father was the youngest of 12. I have one. My wife and I have one child. You have 7. Please take me through the ages of your children, oldest to youngest.
Sure. So we've got a 19-year-old. Girl, 18-year-old boy.
I feel you. My son's 20, so I'm there. I'm right there with you, my friend.
19-year-old girl, 18-year-old boy, 16-year-old girl. Actually 4 girls in a row. So 16, 14, 13, and
it's okay.
10.
You can be a little foggy in your memory because
I can be foggy.
Raising teenagers. And you've got like 5 or 6 teenagers from 19 to 13. Raising teenagers is, and I laugh, Anthony, you'll appreciate this. I laugh at people that either have small children or they're 9, 10, 11 years old or they're just about to be parents. I'm like, you ain't seen anything yet. Wait till your kid becomes a teenager. That's when your life will radically change, when they become a teenager.
Well, I mean, following your father's advice about encouragement, it's a really big part of my life and my attitude as a parent, is to try to see what good there is and what lessons there are, and not to confront, but rather ask a question, gently, hopefully. Sometimes that doesn't work, Anthony. And then our youngest one is 8 years old, and he's very calm, even though he's got 5 sisters and 1 brother. And the boys, I think, are probably more calm. The girls are firecrackers. But that's fine. That's great.
Is that where you got the impetus to begin coaching women? Because
No.
men with daughters have a heart for empowering and helping women go further in life. I'm thinking of a good friend of ours that we've gone to church with for years. He has 2 daughters. His oldest daughter has her PhD, and his youngest daughter is trying to get her degree in engineering. But he's all the time talking to me, and he's got 3 boys in the middle, and he's talking to me about daughters. And we were talking one day, I'll share this with you. We were talking one day, and I don't know what made me think of it, but I told him, I said, my job as a parent of a male, with our kids being so close in age, I feel like my job as a father raising a son is to prepare him so that another father that has a daughter and they come together and they want to get married, I want that father to feel totally comfortable that I've done everything that I can to equip my son to be ready to marry his daughter. Yeah,
look, it's a great it's a great approach. Maybe the film Courageous.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and that just whole notion of taking on fatherhood, and the role of that and doing what you can. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Anthony, I don't mean to interrupt you. My father-in-law gave his firstborn daughter to me and had enough confidence in me to say, take my baby girl and you 2 go in and make a family together.
Yeah.
He had to have confidence in me that I was going to love and protect and care for his daughter and do everything that I could for her. And I've done that for almost 25 years now. And it's a beautiful thing. I had to park on there because that is a connection that fathers have. And I'm not diminishing anything about mothers. I believe this. I believe if we as fathers can encourage our kids and put our arms around them and say, hey, you're always going to find encouragement here. You're always going to find a place where you can be. My dad did it for me. I'm trying to do it for my son. How important is it for you to empower and encourage your kids? Because your kids are from 19 to 8, and you have to parent each one of them differently. How important is encouragement and empowerment to you as a father?
Yeah, it's true, because it's often what I've found, and I'll segue this into coaching women in a moment.
Yes, please do.
What I've found is that people don't know their own gifts, their own strengths, and ironically, often what they pinpoint is their biggest weakness is actually their strength. And it's really sometimes just so helpful to see something in a different light. Like if some of our children have got, maybe you would say, a lot more energy, and being able to direct that in the right way rather than try and crush it.
I love what you just said there. Often, and I had to write that down, Anthony.
Yeah.
Often a person's biggest perceived weakness is really their greatest strength.
Absolutely.
Did you find that lesson? And that is so profound. Thank you for sharing that. Did you find that lesson in coaching or parenting?
Yeah. So the reason I was coaching men and women, or trying to, and men just kept dropping out. like the day after, yeah, well, this sounds great. And the next day I'd get a message saying, my wife says, look, I spoke to my wife and we've decided, not to go ahead at this point. And I'm just sort of thinking, okay. And then the next one, another man. I said, what is this? What am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
And I was at the point, my wife's homeschooling, like we don't have a lot of other income coming in, and coaching can be a bit of a tough gig. So I was at the point of going and getting, looking, maybe not too seriously, but an IT job, going back to, my roots in IT, without much heart in it, but you've got to pay the bills, right? The children, unfortunately, I haven't yet worked out the formula for having children that don't expect to eat every day. It's
100%. Really, yeah. American kids are the same way. Yeah. And televisions and cars and, things like that. I mean, it's just profound. I've got to go here. You're really dialing in on some things today. And I love this conversation. This is so good. What was the impetus for you and your wife to decide to homeschool your children? Because in here in the States, homeschooling from the pandemic is becoming increasingly more popular. But 2 or 3 years ago or 5 years ago, you were almost looked at as weird or not, why are you home? For my family and I, we decided to pull our son out of a public school and send him to a Christian school. So he graduated from a Christian school, went to 2 Christian schools. And we went to Christian school with folks that sent their kids part-time to play sports and things like that. They would take a class or two at the Christian school, but the rest of the time they were homeschooled. For you and your wife, what was that decision like that you were going to homeschool your children? And what's been the greatest benefit to you from it? Yeah.
So we made that decision when we were engaged. And so our eldest has now just graduated from, university, as we call it here, or college, you might call it. And and she never went to school. Yeah. And so I suppose there were faith questions. There was also, perhaps maybe early on we might have been more driven by negative reasons. Mm-hmm. And then after a while, we came to see that was not really the main. The main motive was just to keep them away from the big bad world, right? Yeah. And so we've seen some spin-offs. I'm not sure that the children will see the benefits as they grow up. They do seem to go through a period where they feel some resentment and resistance, and that can certainly happen. So it was in terms of keeping the family together, in terms of teaching them, and I mean, it's similar to, in a sense, like a home business, right? Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, I remember the first time that I heard of people working from home, like in an office setup, and I just, how can that work? Nobody could work from home. And that was the days, that was pre-internet. That was probably even pre-computer. In fact, I'm not even sure that writing had been invented yet, or electricity. So it was, it was a little while ago. But I just didn't click with me. How could you possibly work from home? And it was so new, the idea. That was as a child. And then homeschooling, same thing. I remember the first time I met somebody who was a homeschooler, and I was just fascinated that they were right in the inner city. They were in a very, very heavily populated area, and that the family were homeschooling, and it really amazed me, Yeah.
100%. Let's step aside, take a quick break. There, as we take a quick break, I want to talk about coaching and homeschooling, because I think there's a lot of similarities there. Back in a moment here on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Hey everybody, Brian Sexton here. I want to tell you about our sponsor, SEO National. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. Now, what's that, you might say? Well, search engine optimization helps you show up higher on search engines in front of paying customers for words that you as a business owner can monetize. What a great concept. SEO National is owned by my good buddy Damon Burton, who's been a guest here on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Not only has Damon and his team worked with businesses of all sizes, from e-commerce startups to NBA teams and Shark Tank featured businesses, but more importantly, Damon and his team are about transparency, trust, and providing lifetime value. So much so that he still has his first customers after opening SEO National 14 years ago. Let me give you some intentional encouragement and call Damon and his team today at 855-736-6285 or go to www.seonational.com and get a free quote. Anthony, I want to step aside here real quick here and just I want to wrap my mind around it, because there are a lot of similarities between coaching and homeschooling. How involved did you get in homeschooling your kids? And what were some lessons you learned from homeschooling that you applied to coaching women?
Wow, that's some great questions there. One thing that I find is that I find that women on the whole are more self-aware, and we men tend to strut our gifts and boast a bit. I know I do, and it can almost be a distraction. And so I didn't mention, but I grew up, I had 6 sisters and I was the only boy. And some people draw the wrong conclusion that means that I understand women. That's absolutely not what I'm saying at all.
No, I don't think I don't think God gave us that gift, my friend.
No, I don't think I've got.
Yeah.
It's not that.
You know what? And that you mentioned that, and that's the thing is, I think that the Creator, I think God Almighty, the Creator, gave us women in our lives as men, because you just mentioned women are, and you're 100% correct. Women are incredibly self-aware. Guys are constantly looking for the angle, and we're going to try to figure it out.
Yeah, let's fix this. Yeah, let's fix it. You just told me about a problem. Yeah, let me fix it right now.
let's fix it. That's right. I don't think God gave men the ability to understand women, because if we did, we would try to constantly fix what we thought was incorrect about them. I've got to go here with you for just a second. That moment, you mentioned it earlier in our conversation. You were coaching men and women professionally, and guys didn't have that stick-to-itiveness. Like, well, I talked to my wife, and it's, we're going to go in another direction.
Yeah.
But women, what was that moment like for you when you said, I can really impact the lives of professional women and really help them get more out of their careers than what they thought it would be possible?
Yeah. So what really happened was I was about to basically give up, because I just said, look, I need to eat. One of the women who I had helped earlier on, a few months earlier, had herself gone through a lot of trauma, and financially and in many other ways. And so she knew what it was like, not to have enough money, right? And she told, so when I said, look, I have to go get a job, I have to eat. She wrote back, she said, you're joking, you're not doing that. I said, wait a minute. Easy for you to say if you're nice and rich, but she was very poor. And she said, no, you have to coach women. And I had another response from another woman along the same lines. And I thought, okay, I'm going to take that as a sign that I better keep going with this. What I did what I think I do, and it really ties back to that question of knowing your own weakness, or thinking that you're finding that your weakness is actually a strength. What I try to do is I create a safe space. Coaching is not telling them, here's what you need to do, and giving them instructions. And it's not therapy. I mean, I don't even know. People will argue about the definition of coaching and mentoring and so on. But what I do is I try to create a safe space so that when they do come to a particular area that they think is their weakness, I point out to them that the game is not over yet. Like, you don't declare that you're a loser yet. What you said was actually what you thought was actually a weakness. For example, they say they don't know how to sell, or they may consider themselves introverts, and they say I'm actually an introvert and therefore I can't run a business. Nobody's going to accuse me of being an introvert, but I'm not going to go and say, well, you're an introvert, I'm an extrovert, you've got to be like me. Like, that would be crazy. You've actually got an advantage over me. You're a better listener.
Well, I tell my son all the time. I tell my son, I say, look, the greatest thing in life that you can do is not be like me. I want you to develop your own individuality, be your own man. My dad did that for me. He's like, be your own man. Be your own man. Absolutely. Why is it, do you think, Anthony, that it is difficult for women to discover their true professional selves and their true professional calling and be who God created them to be? Is it societal pressure? Is it thinking they have to be perfect? What have you discovered about that?
There is a lot of perfectionism and a lot of, expecting to please, maybe dad or mom, and dad and mom might not even be alive anymore, but still somehow trying to get
it's pleasing a ghost is what it is. It's pleasing a ghost.
Be, that's right. And so one thing that I try to do is get much more specific, and so that's why I changed my title on LinkedIn, where I'm very active. I changed it from I help business people or something very vague like that to I help women. And that was a really, really scary thing to do. Not because I was scared I'm going to lose all of these men as clients. That was not a risk at all. I wasn't getting any.
Well, what I love what you said, Anthony, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but what I love that you say is Rachel would like, and I'm going to take this right off your profile. Rachel would like to know how to shut down that inner critic who's telling her you're not good enough, even though her clients see that she is.
Exactly.
How do women, first of all, where does that self-limiting belief come from in your experience, where they find it? Is it in the way they were raised? Is it in negative experiences they've had in the workforce? Because you have, in today's society, and here's why I want to go here with you. In today's society, you have a lot of women say, well, it's easier today to be empowered more than ever. And you're working with women every day in Australia that's not their reality. That's not what the perception is out in the world, so to speak, is not the reality that a lot of folks are living in. How do Rachel's get to their good enough?
Yeah, that's what I help them with. And how I do it is by showing them that the very thing that they said they could never do, they're probably already doing. Perfect example is, if, for example, I'm going to say, look, you're really good in dialogue, and I think video is going to work very well for you. I wouldn't recommend that for everybody, but for some of them, I say, this is how you're going to make your mark, is through video. And they say, I could never do video. And I'll say to them, do you realize you just said that to me on Zoom?
Yeah.
The fascinating thing here is that, so I changed my LinkedIn profile to I help women, and that was still too broad and vague. And who is this? A man helping women? I don't help all women, and I very rarely work with Australians anyway. Nothing wrong with Australian women, but I don't. Most of them are in the States. Most of my clients.
Nothing wrong with Australian women. You're married to
No,
them.
I'm married to.
Yeah.
But here is the key: is that I wrote a LinkedIn post about a year ago, a little bit longer, saying, let's play tag Rachel. And here's the deal. What happened was that I was looking through the list of women that I'd like to work with, and that, maybe we'd spoken once or twice, and I saw that she's named Rachel. There's another one called Rachel. Oh, there's another Rachel too. What is it about these Rachels? And so I then wrote a LinkedIn post saying, let's play tag Rachel. And it was just said this: I know some amazing women called Rachel. I know some amazing women not called Rachel. And I know some amazing men not called Rachel as well. Yeah. Let's put aside the non-Rachels at the moment. Tag one Rachel that you know. It can be a various spelling of Rachel, or Rochelle, or Raquel, whatever. Rachel, tag one in the post, say her name, and tell us why she's amazing. We got over 80 Rachels got tagged. Some of them, my sister was Rachel. My grandmother is Rachel. I was supposed to be called Rachel.
Yeah.
Whatever. It was really, really beautiful. And I then changed my headline to I help Rachels. And that is kind of a metaphor for what I do. The post actually was not me doing anything other than calling out the cheer squad, saying, I want you to know, Rachel, and anybody else, that you're not alone.
Yeah.
There's a whole team cheering you on. Your customers are coming in. Even your competitors are coming in and saying, oh, Rachel over here, she is an amazing copywriter. She and I actually work in the same industry for the same. I'm glad if I lose clients to her, like if I lose an opportunity and it goes to her, she is so good. It was just beautiful. And so the other thing is that men tend to be more cerebral, sometimes more abstract. I don't mean more intelligent, but the way of thinking for men is more strategy, more looking out, longer term generally. And women are much more concrete and practical on the whole. They're more one within themselves, I find. Men, it's more easy for men to kind of divorce their body and their soul. And so when I said I help Rachel's, that really triggered in something. It was unique. It was certainly a very different way of putting out an elevator pitch on LinkedIn. But it was also relatable. I get women write to me now, and they will say something like, I'm not sure if I'm a Rachel. Or they will write, and they'll actually sign their name Rachel when it's not their name.
Yeah.
So they're identifying, and that's really what I try to do with my coaching, is to help them to see for themselves. It's not like woo-woo coaching. It's not believing in yourself. It's really, there is somebody out there who needs your help. You are a helper. You are a servant. You are a server. You are great at doing this. You maybe you don't want to niche down because you could probably hold down 4 different full-time jobs in 4 different areas, and you would run the place. You're the one that people turn to. But I like when there's a big family event or a tragedy or whatever, everyone leans on you. So why don't we tap into those gifts? And even in what you think is your negative is actually a positive as well.
Yeah. So good. Let's step aside, take a quick break, and we come back.
Sure.
Anthony, I want to tell your story. And so we'll be back in a moment here on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Hey, everybody, Brian Sexton. Want to tell you about my new book, People Buy from People 10 Powerful People Lessons from the Ultimate People Person. My dad. My dad was one of the greatest connectors that I ever knew. And he shared with me 10 connecting principles that I have used throughout my 25-year sales and sales management, customer engagement, and leadership career that I'm passing along to you. If you want to be a stronger, deeper, and more powerful connector, you've got to pick up a copy of People Buy from People. There are concepts in there that you may not realize help make you a power connector. You can go to Amazon and pick it up, Kindle if you're an e-reader and you like to do it that way, or now available on Audible. And there's one other way you can get a copy of People Buy from People. You can get one from me and I'll sign it for you. You go to intentionalmediaandpublishing@gmail.com and send me an email, and I'll share with you the link on how you can get a signed copy. You can buy a signed copy directly from me. Again, People Buy from People. If you want to connect like never before, pick up your copy today of People Buy from People. And now let's get back to more great conversation here on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Anthony, I want to dive into your story. And again, I just thank you for just being so authentic and sharing. I was fascinated by the fact you have 7 kids. I was fascinated by the fact you're the only son of 6 sisters.
That's right.
So take me through your story from point A to where we are today. Tell your story.
Okay, so I won't go back too far, other than to say that I had in my career, apart from having 6 girls around, my wife always said how quiet I am when I'm around my sisters, and not many people say that I'm quiet, but but my sisters, I mean, I suppose that we might say that they really set the tone of the atmosphere, and one thing that I did, I naturally was, I suppose, more attracted or good at the technical stuff, the IT stuff. And so I did that for 20, 30 years, jumping ahead here. And then I realized I was just very frustrated with IT. The industry itself was going down, a lot of things getting outsourced to, cheaper countries and so on. So it was just hard to sustain, to keep up either contract work or a full-time job in it. But also, I really wanted to speak about the people side and the marketing side and teaching. I love teaching. And so, and storytelling, and that didn't really fit into the IT world. And so I started writing articles for IT magazines, and articles, not just technical stuff. I wrote for 5 different magazines, not just technical. And what I did was I pretended that you knew exactly nothing about the topic, and that so to try and put you into context, put in some story. One of the articles that I wrote was why I love unhappy customers. Right, so it was not your typical IT thing. And then as I started to go out into business on my own, I found that I was helping some other IT people, especially on the marketing side, because it was new to us all. And then as I did that, I ended up helping conversations, shall we say, with people. Yeah.
Did you find that connecting with you through writing came naturally? Because you mentioned, you said you love teaching, and I can tell, and we talked earlier about your involvement in your kid's life with homeschooling and things like that.
Sure.
Is that where that love of teaching, you think, developed, is as you started teaching your children as they were young in homeschooling?
No. It was certainly, even as a child, I tried to tell jokes, to my sisters, or read out from joke books and storytelling. And so I can even go back, certainly to my very youngest days with that. But I was never a teacher in a school classroom or anything. but if I learn something, I just can't help but pass it on. And so in terms of writing, there was actually a 5-minute episode in my Life, a Beautiful One. I did not realize at the time just how helpful it would be for my writing.
Wow.
It was incredible. It was actually nothing to do with writing at the time, but I was recording myself on video, and like everybody, I hated the look of myself, hated the sound of my voice, thought I sounded funny. Oh no, I did an and an R, and I was just losing confidence and trying to record on my own. And I was the actor, I was the script writer, I was the camera guy, I was the editor, and then I was also pretending to be the audience and the critic. And so I was hypercritical, just trying to create some video course or something, and it just wasn't really working. And then I realized, I said to myself, Anthony, because that's my name, I said, Anthony, you're not going to win an Oscar. Just get over it.
Yeah.
And once I recognized that, from the very next day, I caught myself actually enjoying watching my videos. I said, what happened there? I realized that my expectations were just ridiculous. I was trying to go for a Super Bowl ad standard of video in my mind, and I was setting myself an impossible barrier.
You know something? Let me jump in there, Anthony. That is for people that create any kind of content, whether it's a podcast, whether it's videos, things like that. There's always something that you could be critical of. And people, I was talking to somebody earlier today, and they said, you have a very thick Southern accent. And
Right.
I you know, I could look at that and I could say, well, I'm not as good a podcaster as Joe Rogan. I'm not as good a podcaster as this person that has millions of downloads and millions of followers and things like that. But I have determined in purpose, to your point, to be the best host of the Intentional Encourager podcast that I can be.
Exactly.
Tell the story. When that moment happened for you, when you said, I am going to start enjoying my videos and doing what I do.
Well, that was not my intention, but that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And I could binge watch myself on video now. And even actors and TV presenters.
You've got to tell me your secret, because I can't even get my wife to listen to an Intentional Encourager podcast. She's like, I'm sure that's good. I hear you talk enough. So
it is. Well, one of the things that I do, like on my YouTube channel, which is just a technical channel on how to use, little bits and pieces of Zoom with a 90-second video here and there, or how to build your YouTube channel. I can create videos all day long. It's super easy for me because I don't really care that I am not of a certain standard, or that I don't look as good as Brian Sexton. I don't care. And that I don't have your Southern accent. I don't care.
You could wake up and fall out of bed and look better than Brian Sexton.
Well,
I can tell you
I might try that. I'll try that as a home exercise. So the thing is that somebody pointed out or a few people pointed out on some of my videos on YouTube, they said, you blink a lot. So I would take that as an advantage. That we're taking it as a criticism. I'll take it as a benefit. I'm going to say, great, I'll call myself the blinking coach. I don't care. It's that ability to accept your strengths and your weaknesses, obviously in the light of God and divine providence, right? And to say, I don't even need to, I can't be anybody else. I'm not going to complain about my age, that I'm feeling old or I'm feeling young, or I'm happy with that. There's nothing I can do about that. I'm not going to be anybody else. What I can control, that's what I focus on. And that is not going to suit everybody. And I totally get that. Just as I don't coach all women, I very often will tell women, I don't think I'm the right one. I don't think I'm a good fit for you. I don't think I've got what you need. And others that they just, and so that whole idea that you don't have to you don't have to fit into every single. I mean, there's only one podcast seat for the
Yeah.
intentional encourager podcast host, and you're it. So
Well,
you're the
for
best.
better, for better or worse, it's
Better
me,
or
and
worse, you're the one
it's,
doing it.
until
I'm
until
not.
somebody comes
Yeah.
and takes it along. Anthony, I want you to share with folks the biggest obstacle that you've overcome, because in life, it doesn't matter if you're here in the States, you're in the UK, in Australia, life has obstacles and challenges. I know you mentioned being in the IT industry for 30 years and being frustrated by how that was going and things like that. Whether it's professional or personal, take me
Sure.
through the biggest obstacle that you've overcome in your life and what the lesson you learned from it was.
Yeah. So I would it would be, I would have to say that it was a financial a financial one. Whether a lot of it was driven by, a bad investment that was really driven by a lack of just really driven by a decision made out of fear, and that recognition that things work out. That God is going to give you all that you need to do. Everything He gives, everything that you need to do what you need to do. He'll give you the health, he'll give you the time, give you the abilities. But that doesn't mean that you can lie in bed all day and wait for it to happen. You have to do your bit. But the idea here is that you dig the ground and you plant the seed, and then let the rain fall where it will. But you've got to do your part.
I love that. I'm writing that down. God gives us everything that we need to do what we need to do.
Well, it would be unjust if he didn't.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. when take me real quick, take me through that, because you mentioned a bad investment made out of
that
fear.
was part of it. It was a lack of my ability to sell myself. Imposter syndrome, a whole lot of things all coming together. The IT industry going down. There were just a lot of things that came together, or if you like, they didn't come together.
So take me through that moment, Anthony, real quick. Take me through that moment where you finally powered through the fear, because fear can be very paralyzing for a lot of people. And I know you probably coach some ladies that are dealing with just absolute fear, and it's paralyzing to them. And I've been through it myself at times.
Sure.
How did you overcome that fear that you had from that bad investment, and really just say, hey, it's okay, I can get through this?
And the answer is I didn't. I have overcome it, but it wasn't how I did it. It was, I call it divine providence, but you might call it, somebody else might call it circumstances. I realized that the train still kept running anyway, even though I thought we'd lost, we lost the driver and we didn't have any fuel. The train kept running, and life did keep going on. And then I realized, goodness, we got through that. Well,
sometimes you can feel like the train is just hitting you, like you're standing on the tracks. It's almost like here in the States, we had the silent movies back in the 1920s, and the villain has strapped a young lady to the tracks, and the train is coming.
Yeah.
And there's this dramatic rescue scene. But sometimes in life, the train just hits you full force, and you feel like you're gonna die. And I don't mean to be so graphic and dramatic, but what you said there was so impactful, Anthony. You realize the train kept running and life kept going. And I love that you said that.
Well, it's absolutely true. And the other thing is that the right people come into your path. We ended up having to sell our old house, find a new house. I wasn't happy about that situation, but we had a real estate agent who, and it was exactly the wrong time to sell. Everybody was telling us that the market is down, hold on to your house. And he used that weakness in the market to our advantage. And it was just extraordinary. And I look back and I just thought, this is just amazing. How did he used it in a very good way. He said, well, that means there's fewer properties on the market. And we ended up mortgage free in a new house. We didn't know about COVID. This was just before COVID happened, a few months before. And next thing, we're in a house which is much more remote from all of these areas that have, that have got, like, it's much easier for us to feel a little bit more isolated, but still have plenty of places to walk around. There's just a whole lot of things that came together that we couldn't possibly foresee.
I want you to,
came into our path as well.
Anthony, I love that perspective. And again, I live in a state that's sparsely populated. We have about 1.8 million people. I can walk outside and I have room to, and there's a creek behind me and there's some woods. And, the times I just look and I'm like, this is great. Take the audience through your biggest piece of intentional encouragement and just leave folks today with whatever is on your heart to share around intentional encouragement.
Well, one of my favorite sayings is if a thing is worth doing, it's worth doing badly. We set ourselves impossible expectations on ourselves. And we say things like, I'm a perfectionist. Oh, really? Tell me, what have you done today that's perfect? Yeah. Like, you're setting yourself up for failure. Your job is to move the goalposts. Wherever the ball lands in life, you do what you can. If you make a mess of it, then you do what you can. Wherever the ball lands in life, take a set of inflatable goalposts, imaginary inflatable goalposts, blow them up and put them there and say, that was a goal.
Mm-hmm. And when I come in on the intention, and I didn't realize it till just now, I've recorded over 100 episodes. And I realize now that the way that I say, welcome to the Intentional Encourager podcast, I'm your host, Brian Sexton. I'm actually using the Australian rules football symbol for a goal. I'm doing this. And I remember, right. I remember when I was a kid, I would watch ESPN and they would have Australian rules football, and the referee would stand up and about his waist, he would go. He would
That's
do
right.
this.
Yeah, they do that for
the Australian rules football.
So
Anthony English. Anthony English, you have enlightened me today, my friend. I did not realize that what I was actually doing was signaling a goal for Australian rules football. I did not realize that just until this. So my sincere gratitude to you, my friend.
Well, let's take a lesson from that. Even though probably most of the listeners have never seen an Australian rules game, let's take a lesson from that, which is that when you have a goal in Australian rules, you have your two goalposts just upright, and the ball has got to go through there. And if it goes through there, it's 6 points.
Yes.
But there are two other goals on the outside. So imagine two tall posts and two outside smaller posts. And you still get a point if you miss. That's called the behind. And so you still get a point if you miss. Just because your dart hasn't hit the center of the dartboard doesn't mean you don't get any points.
I love it. And I'm writing down the beauty of Australian rules football. Even when you miss, you still get a point. That's
right. It's a goal is 6 points, and a behind is 1 point, which is when you're aiming for a goal and you miss it.
Wow, that is so good. What a great way to
metaphor for life.
What a great way to end our conversation. Anthony, tell the folks how they can get in touch with you, connect with you. There may be somebody listening going, I really like what Anthony has to say. Yeah. I would love for him to help this Rachel. You may be a woman there that is listening and say, I need some help dialing in my Rachel. So tell folks how they can connect with you.
The very best way is to connect with me on LinkedIn. Okay. All the Rachels will be on LinkedIn, even if they're not posting or active. to connect with me on LinkedIn and direct message. But most important, when you connect with me, say, I heard you on that guy with the Southern accent on his podcast. I can't remember his name. The Australian rules guy.
Yeah,
you tell me that. Mention that you heard or saw me on the podcast here.
Mention that you heard Anthony on the Intentional Encourager podcast, and say, listen, I couldn't understand a word the two of you guys were saying because of his Australian accent and your Southern accent. Your hillbilly accent. Anthony
Correct.
English, this has been tremendously valuable conversation. Thank you for joining me today on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
You're very welcome. Wonderful to be here. Thank you, Brian.
My thanks as always to producer Bryce Sexton and technical advisor Matt Means. And of course, the ultimate thanks goes to the Lord Jesus Christ, who provides intentional encouragement every day through his word. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy all the other episodes of the Intentional Encourager podcast, releasing each Tuesday and Friday. You can get those by subscribing wherever you get podcasts. Until next time, remember, anyone at any time, any place can be an intentional encourager.